Hello, thank you all for joining me in studying A Course in Miracles workbook for students. I'm Willie from the Ozarks, and we're ready for our January the 22nd lesson in A Course in Miracles. What I see is a form of vengeance. We're reading from the original edition. What I see is a form of vengeance. Today's idea accurately describes the way anyone who holds attack thoughts in his mind must see the world. Let's catch that. If you hold attack thoughts in your mind, you must see the world as a form of vengeance, or what you might think of as vindictiveness or revenge. As a matter of fact, let's just talk. Let's look at the definitions. Vengeance in the Oxford Dictionary: punishment inflicted or retribution exacted for an injury or wrong. Vengeance in the Britannica: the act of doing something to hurt someone because that person did something that hurt you or someone else. And on dictionary.com, vengeance: a desire for revenge, retaliation against, or punishment of someone for some kind of harm that they caused or wrongdoing that they did, whether real or perceived. It can be used as a more intense synonym for revenge. Being vindictive, spiteful, resentful, rancorous, implacable. So vindictive and revengeful. Think of those words. Maybe those words may be used more often. Vengeance. What I see is a form of vengeance. Today's idea accurately describes the way anyone who holds attack thoughts in his mind must see the world. Having projected his anger onto the world, he sees vengeance about to strike at him. His own attack is thus perceived as self-defense. This becomes an increasingly vicious circle until he is willing to change how he sees. Otherwise, thoughts of attack and counterattack will preoccupy him and people his entire world. What peace of mind is possible to him then? It is from this savage fantasy that you want to escape. It is from this savage fantasy that you want to escape. Is it not joyous news to hear that it is not real? Is it not a happy discovery to find that you can't escape? You made what you would destroy. Everything that you hate and would attack and kill, you made it. All that you fear does not exist. Look at the world about you at least 5 times today for at least a minute each time. And yesterday I got those backwards. And I was saying 5 minutes for, I thought it was several times, but 5 minutes. And he is going to get us up to taking 5, 10, 15 minutes even in our quiet time twice a day. And a few times even a little longer. But basically he'll stop at about 15 minutes twice a day. But he's going to do it gradual and slowly. So be sure to do your lessons, and you'll just effortlessly find one day that you're sitting quietly and still and peaceful and aware, maybe aware of the superconscious as we talked about yesterday, for 15 minutes twice a day. Look at the world about you at least 5 times today for at least a minute each time. As your eyes move slowly from one object to another, from one body to another, say to yourself, I see only the perishable. I see nothing that will last. What I see is not real. What I see is a form of vengeance. At the end of each practice period, ask yourself, is this the world I really want to see? The answer is surely obvious. Of course we don't want to see that world. Okay, let's go back and take a look in our text reading, and we're ready for in chapter 3, we're retraining the mind. Section 7, the loss of certainty. As you're turning there, let me tell you a little bit about a flowering quince, a Cydonia oblonga. and this is out of the ediblelandscaping.com. Toyo Nishiki Flowering Quince. A Toyo Nishiki. Sounds like it's from Japan, doesn't it? Flowering Quince. Toyo Nishiki Flowering Quince is a compact ornamental shrub that's much more disease resistant than fruiting quince. It thrives in the landscape with large pinkish white blooms turning to larger than average fruits used for jellies and jams, especially mixed jams because the fruits contain a lot of pectin. The flowers bloom early with forsythia. Fruits mature in fall. Space them 6 foot apart, 6 foot circles it says, zones 5 through 8. And that's the Toyo Nishiki Flowering Quince. And I have a picture. I'll see if I can show it to you. And also right above it, you might take a look. They're not real good pictures, but there's a picture of the medlar too. So I'm going to hold that up and see if you can see those. Can you see those pictures? There's your flowering quince and your medlars. We talked about the bread a giant medlar yesterday. Okay, let's go take a look now. The loss of certainty. We said before that the abilities which man possesses are only shadows of his real strengths, and that the intrusion of the ability to perceive, which is inherently judgmental, was introduced only after the separation. So to perceive is inherently judgmental. No one has been sure of anything since, because you're not knowing anymore. You're perceiving, you're judging. But we're learning to do it less and less and following inner guidance, the Holy One inside, the Holy Spirit, the Great Spirit, whatever you want to call the interconnecting link with God and all your brothers and sisters. You will also remember, however, that I made it clear that the resurrection was the means for the return to knowledge, which was accomplished by the union of my will with the Father's. We can now make a distinction which will greatly facilitate clarity in our subsequent statements. Paragraph 52. Since the separation, the words create and make have been greatly confused. When you make something, you make it out of a sense of lack or need. Anything that is made for a specific purpose and has no true generalizability. Generalizability. You can't generalize it. When you make something to fill a perceived lack, which is obviously why you would want to make anything, you are tacitly implying that you believe in separation. Knowing, as we have frequently observed, does not lead to doing at all. 53. The confusion between your own creation and what you create is so profound that it has become literally impossible for you to know anything. Knowledge is always stable, and it is quite evident that human beings are not stable. Nevertheless, they are perfectly stable as God created them. In this sense, when their behavior is unstable, they are disagreeing with God's idea of creation. Man can do this if he chooses, but he would hardly want to if he were in his right mind. That's what we want to do, be in our right minds, huh? The problem that bothers you most is the fundamental question which man continually asks of himself, but which cannot properly be directed to himself at all. He keeps asking himself what he is. He keeps asking himself what he is, but it can't be directed to yourself, only to God. This implies that the answer is not only one which he knows, but is also one which is up to him to supply. 54. Man cannot perceive himself correctly. He has no image. Wow, he has no image. The word image is always perception related and not a product of knowing. Images are symbolic and stand for something else. The current emphasis on changing your image merely recognizes the power of perception, but it also implies that there is nothing to know. Knowing is not open to interpretation. It is possible to interpret meaning, but this is always open to error because it refers to the perception of meaning. Such wholly needless complexities are the result of man's attempt to regard himself as both separated and unseparated at the same time. It is impossible to undertake a confusion as fundamental as this without engaging in further confusion. 55. Methodologically, man's mind has been very creative, but as always occurs when method and content are separated, it has not been utilized for anything but an attempt to escape a fundamental and entirely inescapable impasse. This kind of thinking cannot result in a creative outcome, although it has resulted in considerable ingenuity. It is noteworthy, however, that this ingenuity has almost totally divorced him from knowledge. Wow, catch that. It is noteworthy, however, that this ingenuity has almost totally divorced him from knowledge. Knowledge does not require ingenuity. When we say the truth shall set you free, we mean that all this kind of thinking is a waste of time, but that you are free of the need to engage in it if you're willing to let it go. You're free to not use it if you just let it go. And he quoted there out of John 8:32, the truth shall set you free. And then he says here that the truth shall set you free. We mean that all this kind of thinking is a waste of time, but that you are free of the need to engage in it if you're willing to let it go. Are we willing? Listen to the Holy Spirit inside instead of the mechanics of the mind trying to figure out how to supply a lack, because there is no lack. We're one in God and we have everything been given to us. Prayer is the way of asking for something. Prayer is the medium of miracles. But the only meaningful prayer is for forgiveness, because those who have been forgiven have everything. We better read those two sentences again, or maybe it's even two. Prayer is a way of asking for something. Prayer is the medium of miracles. But the only meaningful prayer is for forgiveness, because those who have been forgiven have everything. Once forgiveness has been accepted, prayer in the usual sense becomes utterly meaningless. The usual sense where you think you have a lack and you have to ask God to help you supply the lack. Well, he's saying that forgiveness is what we want to use our prayer for. And once forgiveness has been accepted, prayer in the usual sense becomes utterly meaningless. Essentially, a prayer for forgiveness is nothing more than a request that we may be able to recognize something we already have. Okay, again, essentially, a prayer for forgiveness is nothing more than a request that we may be able to recognize something we already have. In electing to perceive instead of to know, man placed himself in a position where he could resemble his Father only by miraculous perceiving. He has lost the knowledge that he himself is a miracle. Miraculous creation was his source and also his real function. He was created in love and now he extends love. He's a miracle, an act of love. Paragraph 57, God created man in his own image and likeness, is correct in meaning, but the words are open to considerable interpretation. And that's referring there in Genesis. I didn't look it up, but it's God created man in his own image and likeness, is correct in meaning, but the words are open to considerable misinterpretation. This is avoided, however, if image is understood to mean thought and likeness is taken as of a like quality. God did create the soul in his own thought, and of a quality like to his own. There is nothing else. Perception, on the other hand, is impossible without a belief in more and less. Perception at every level involves selectivity and is incapable of organization without it. In all types of perception, there is a continual process of accepting and rejecting, or organizing and reorganizing, of shifting and changing focus. Evaluation is an essential part of perception because judgment must be made for selection. And there at the beginning of that paragraph 57, and when he says God created man in his own image and likeness, if you want a little assignment, go find that in the Bible. Find out where that's at. And since I forgot to find it for you, I try to give you those references so that if you want to, you can go back and look at them and see how the Bible is kind of like the source of Course in Miracles, and yet I don't know if the word source is the best, but it's an explanation of the Bible with a really high consciousness of love observing it. Evaluation is an essential part of perception because judgment must be made for selection. Paragraph 58. What happens to perception if there are no judgments and there is nothing but perfect equality? Perception becomes impossible. Truth can only be known. All of it is equally true, and knowing any part of it is to know all of it. Only perception involves partial awareness. Knowledge transcends all the laws which govern perception, because partial knowledge is impossible. It is all one and has no separate parts. You who are really one with it need but know yourself, and your knowledge is complete. To know God's miracle is to know Him. Paragraph 59. Forgiveness is the healing of the perception of separation. Healing or forgiveness is the healing of the perception of separation. We're going to start seeing that we're all one. A thought of union is what we want. That we're all united. That I am that, and that, and that, and that. We're everywhere. Okay? That's what forgiveness recognizes and sees. Forgiveness is the healing of the perception of separation. Correct perception of each other is necessary because minds have willed to see themselves as separate. Each soul knows God completely. That is the miraculous power of the soul. The fact that each one has this power completely is a fact that is entirely alien to human thinking, in which if anyone has everything, there is nothing left. But that's in the human thinking. In God's way of thinking, we're all one and we all have all. God's given everything to His beloved Son. And the more you have, the more you want to give. And you can't lose anything. Okay, let's forgiveness is the healing of the perception of separation. Correct perception of each other is necessary because minds have willed to see themselves as separate. Each soul knows God completely. That is the miraculous power of the soul. The fact that each one has this power completely is a fact that is entirely alien to human thinking, in which if anyone has everything, there's nothing left. God's miracles are as total as His thoughts, because they are His thoughts. And the last paragraph, 60, this will finish this section. As long as perception lasts, prayer has a place. Okay, as long as perception lasts, prayer has a place. We're going to climb the ladder of prayer. Since perception rests on lack, those who perceive have not totally accepted the atonement and given themselves over to it, over to truth. Since perception rests on lack, Those who perceive have not totally accepted the at-one-ment or the atonement and given themselves over to truth. Perception is a separated state, and a perceiver does need healing. Communion, not prayer, is the natural state of those who know. God and His miracles are inseparable, we being the miracles. How beautiful indeed are the thoughts of God who live in His light. Your worth is beyond perception because it is beyond doubt. Do not perceive yourself in different lights. Know yourself in the one light where the miracle that is you is perfectly clear. Okay, let's go back and take a look now in lesson 22 again. What I see is a form of vengeance. And remember, today's idea accurately describes the way anyone who holds attack thoughts in his mind must see the world. And it becomes a vicious circle. And projecting his anger onto the world, he sees vengeance about to strike at him. His own attack is thus perceived as self-defense. This becomes an increasingly vicious circle until he is willing to change how he sees. Otherwise, thoughts of attack and counterattack will preoccupy him and people his entire world. What peace of mind is possible to him then? It is from this savage fantasy that you want to escape. Is it not joyous news to hear that it is not real? You don't have to defend yourself. You have everything and you can't lose anything. That's the atonement. Just keep practicing forgiveness till you see that. Is it not a happy discovery to find that you can escape? You made what you would destroy, everything that you hate and would attack and kill, all that you fear does not exist. Look at the world about you for at least 5 times today, for at least a minute each time. So at least 1 minute each time. You're going to look around, do it 5 times today. As your eyes move slowly from one object to another, from one body to another, say to yourself, I see only the perishable. I see nothing that will last. What I see is not real. What I see is a form of vengeance. At the end of each practice period, ask yourself, is this the world I really want? And the answer is surely obvious. Of course not. Okay, a little chilly today, so let's see how sounds like my guitar's still tuned good. What I see is a form of vengeance. What I see is a form of vengeance. I see only the perishable. I see nothing that will last. What I see is not real. What I see is not real. What I see is a form of vengeance. Is this the world I really want to see? What I see is a form of vengeance. What I see is a form of vengeance. I see only the perishable. I see nothing that will last. What I see is not real. What I see is not real. What I see is a form of vengeance. What I see is a form of vengeance. Is this the world I really want to see? Is this the world I really want to see? And the answer is obvious. No, it's not the world I want to see. I want to see the world where I'm one with God and all my brothers and sisters and all creation. What I see is a form of vengeance. Be sure to do your 5 times for a minute today, at least a minute, he said. What I see is a form of vengeance. I see only the perishable. I see nothing that will last. What I see is not real. What I see is a form of vengeance. Is this the world I really want to see? And whether or not you use the melody, and some people that really helps them, it helps me. I've got to sing it a lot before it really helps me, and it might not help you hearing it once. So don't worry so much about whether you have the melody in as you leave it, on any of these. And if it's helpful, use it. If not, use the words, and just be sure to do the lesson though. What I see is a form of vengeance. And we're going to see something much more integrated and peaceful. But we got to realize what we're doing before we can be free from it. Peace.